The joy of technology, hey? So you're up in Arakoon, and yeah, thanks for making the time to have a chat about the exhibition.
Thank you for having me, yeah.
And it's nice to see your face. So the show's been up for around 2 weeks, and here we are on the 1st of April in a place where I don't think any of us thought we would be, but here we are, and everyone in the world's going through this, I suppose. So what's it like where you are at the moment?
It's life sort of continuing as normal in Arakoon, but everyone's aware of what's happening outside of Arakoon, and still worried because I mean we're in a bubble up here, but it just takes one person to come into the community, and because say most of the community can't self-isolate, so because of say 3 generations of people living in one house, it's hard for people to self-isolate. So life's carrying on, but just sort of aware of what's happening in the world. Yeah.
It's a complex situation for so many people. Can you tell audiences who aren't aware of you and your practice a little bit about where your family's from and how your family's going at this time?
Oh, okay. Well, my father's Gureng Gureng Gangalu. Gureng Gureng is our language nation around the Bundaberg region, from the Burnett River up to Gladstone and up to the Great Dividing Range. And the Gangalu nation is northwest of Gureng Gureng. That's where my grandfather's people from. My grandmother's Gureng Gureng. And my mother is Kanak. My great-grandparents came from Santo Espiritu, Northern Island of Vanuatu. They were brought to Queensland to cut cane. So most of my family are in Nambour on the Sunshine Coast at the moment, and thus safe at the moment. But it's sort of worrying that they're down there and I'm up here, and I sort of get news but don't know what's happening, really, what's happening on the ground. But they're safe at the moment, so that's great. And I'm up in Arakoon working at the Wikinkugu Art Centre as a studio facilitator, just supporting the artists here at Wikinkugu, and next door at the Women's Centre. So this studio here, Wikinkugu, where I'm sitting at the moment, it's like a men's studio, and next door we have the Women's Centre, and their practice is quite contrast to what they do. The men, they do a lot of carvings of stories. The camp dog stories are a very popular one. So they carve a lot of camp dogs, a lot of totemic images of their totems, and their paintings and their carvings are painted in the traditional ochre colours, like the work behind me by Gary Napunan. So it's generally the red ochre, the white, the yellow and the black. And the ladies, they do a lot of landscape paintings, and it's very colourful and bright, and it's the works are really contrasting, but they sort of match beautifully. At the moment, we have a group of elders doing weaving with pandanus, so I help them go out bush and cut pandanus for them, and they take me out there and I dig up some roots, some dye roots, and then they prep the roots and I start a fire and we boil them and they just soak them and dry them out, clean them and start weaving these beautiful baskets. Yeah.
Wonderful. And thank you for sending down some of Auntie Irene Puchmunka's beautiful baskets when you sent your work down to NorthSite a month or so ago. I think it's awesome that you're up there at the Art Centre with both the Wickmen and the women. And your brother was up there for a time, wasn't he? What's it like, people recognising you years later?
Oh, it's awesome. It just helps. It helps because there's the language barrier, because most people here speak language, and even the artists, like they can understand English, but to speak it, they don't speak it so well. But you can explain things to them, and they get it. So I'm picking up some Wick language. Yeah, my brother was here in the 90s, working during the Wick debate and with the elders and working at the Art Centre. It was more of a cultural space at that time. So a lot of those elders have passed on, but a lot of the boys were young fellas when they were working here. And there's still some elders here, like the old ladies that I work with. It's great just working with them, because my brother was here for that long that, you know, that it just makes it so much easier. And they like to teach me Wick ways and introduce me to their families and stuff. So I'm pretty honoured, actually, yeah, to be here.
And as you made the move up to Aurukun, you were starting to realise these ideas that you were working towards in an exhibition, which you went on to title "Expose the Gap." And I know there's some ideas that you've had, you know, developing over some time. I might bring up a couple of images actually of that work, and you can share a little bit about how it was making that work from Aurukun as you settled in. And I know that the men were generous in sharing ochres with you, and which have been incorporated into the final work. So can you see this screen that I have up here?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Oops. Let's just, oops. Let's get rid of that one. And
yeah, I explained to him too about this exhibition, because I mean, coming up here, I had ideas of printing, screen printing, lino, reduction lino. So I had all these ideas, and I'd sent equipment up here for it, like permaset inks and rollers and frames and screens and stuff. But after getting here and getting back to Aurukun, and after being here last year, and the whole process of what I was going to do had changed, and I wanted to use the ochres like that the boys used. And just talking with the senior artists, I was explaining them my work and my message to my younger generation and my people, and they were happy. They were happy to let me use the ochres. And so it took a bit of experimenting, and I sort of didn't sort of know how I wanted to use them, but I just used them with the acrylics that I used on the canvas work, and I think it sort of worked.
Mm.
And plus, using the charcoals too, rubbing the milkwood that they use for the carvings, we also use in the paint, and it's sort of, I don't know, I liked how the charcoals work too, and yeah.
Yeah, there's a really beautiful surface to the work. So you created these kind of textural, strong political works, I suppose, first for a show with Black Square Arts during KIAF last year. And I guess they were works on canvas, but when we unpacked these at the gallery and saw that the way that you'd continued that message and the ideas in that in those first works, and then combined use of charcoal and ochre and acrylic paint, and really pushed the paper in new ways. I think you know, just technically it was really, really exciting to see this work develop. So Expose the Gap, do you want to go back to the start, where the exhibition and the ideas started for you?
Well, like we were talking before about KIAF last year, I suppose I'd put a residency in, and it gave me a chance to bring out this expression that I suppose I've had for a while, and it's always developing, just with things that are happening topically, things that are happening all the time, and Close the Gap is something that's been around for, I think, 9 years now. I do support Close the Gap. It's not saying it's bad policy. It's I like it because there's accountability. But over the past 9 or so years, nothing's actually sort of happened. But at least there's something there to hold some accountability to what's happening. It's things are more transparent. I suppose back in the day when I was a youngster growing up, there was always this conversation about throwing money at blackfellas, and blackfellas just waste money and give them millions of dollars, and it's no use. Like, people are always giving us stuff, but now society's matured, and everyone's asking questions of politicians and their policies and stuff. Close the Gap's a chance to actually look at things, and I felt like I wanted to pick apart things, and you know, they're looking at education and health and all these things that are important to making lives better for Indigenous Australia. But I want to look at what is actually the cause of the problem. You know, it's like, you know, it's like a flu or something. These are just symptoms of a flu. I want to look at what's the cause of the bad education or bad health and stuff like this. So looking at that, and in those expressions, like I say, I consider myself a cultural artist, so I'm always honouring my elders and also talking to the youngsters. So I'm talking to the young ones and saying, like, we are not the problem. That's something that I've always been told. So I'm just passing that along, but then looking at what is the actual gap, and I'm trying to simplify that, and you know, culture is power. Like, for me, and for a lot of people, it is, you know. And when I've felt sort of trying to fitting into somewhere or into something in society, and when I've gone back to culture, I feel more whole. and feel more confident. And having knowledge about the wider Australia and having knowledge and culture makes me feel more confident and more stable. So just little reminders and also, like I say, picking things apart and using words like sovereignty and culture is our capital. It's sort of like it's our whole being, like land, like country, family, ceremony. It's all one. It's all the one sort of thing. And just looking at the difference between our culture and the Commonwealth of Australia. And just the myths, I guess, that have survived for 200 or so years, that still continue. But it's not like I can see Australia being a great nation in the future, because I can just look at my parents and then look at my grandparents, and 4 generations ago it was first contact, and it was terrible, and things are getting better. The next generation feels so confident and proud of who they are. It's vast different to when I was growing up, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think there is a lot of strength and power and hope in these works, and it was really wonderful to see them on the front wall of Wombaja, the new art centre in Cairns, and open with this show, because I think the work speaks to lots of people, and where we are currently, in Australia. And yes, there was just recently, the review of the Close the Gap that they did in Canberra, and looking at whether some of those, life expectancy gaps and some of those really, tragic statistics basically between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Australian, living standards and the rest of mainstream Australia. There's things to be addressed there, but I think also in this work it's timely in that it's really talking about capitalism and materialism, like you've got right there, and the way that the world has sped up to this point. And I think a lot of those ideas that you're exploring in that work are really eloquently stated from a First Nations perspective right here. Have you been thinking more about these works over the past weeks with what's happening in the world?
Yeah. It's been a conversation, I guess, not just with with the WIC people or Indigenous people, even non-Indigenous, like the co-workers on the council and stuff. It's very interesting times. And the more, it's very new to all of us, and at first it was very scary, and it still is. But when I'm talking to people, we can see positives out of it, if not just taking us back to, for everyone, taking us back to what's really important.
Yeah.
The necessities of life. What do we? What really makes us happy? Just the freedom to walk outside and just enjoy people's company and sharing time. And so it's and being up here in Arakan, these things I talk about, closing the gap. It's like bang. It's like just a slap in your face. To people that haven't been on community before, most communities are a shock for people. And Arakan being so strong culturally, it's actually this is a treasure, being in a community where culture is so strong, where language is so strong.
Yeah.
And visually for people here, it's a shock because it's culture and the first world just like colliding, and things like materialism and stuff. Like these people are the least materialistic people
Mm.
who've been to a lot of communities, you know, and this, you know, there's people coming up here. There's a lot of people coming up here. Big turnover of people coming up here, flying in to close that gap. But it's still it's a struggle for both sides, you know, coming to terms with how do we do this. And we were like, a lot of us are talking about people going out into outstations, like while this is happening, and we're frightened that someone might come in here, you know, and expose people to this virus. I think the safest place for people, and everyone wants to go back on country anyways, you know, having families out on country, away from the community, where they can get back to culture, get back to bush tucker. And there's also, you know, Arakan's always in the news for negative things, and taking some of these young people that are lost and are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, that it's not even cultural, like some of the violence, that taking them back out on country. Because as soon as we go out of the community, out bush, all of us feel so relaxed and happy.
Yeah.
Like Arakan is a great community, but once we just step outside, get off the bitumen, the stories start coming out. You know, they start telling me things, and you know, it's beautiful. And yeah, like I say, I think this virus is going to change a lot of people and ways of thinking, hopefully.
Yeah, I think it's inevitable when such something so huge happens, that there is a shift, and I think a lot of people are starting to slow down and see some of the positives that are going to come through this difficult time, particularly in terms of connection and innovation and shifts in power, and the way that things can be done differently and different worldviews.
Yeah.
I've got a work up on screen at the moment. Can you see? Say it enough times.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about creating this work earlier this year?
Yeah. It's about like this narrative, these things, and that sort of have continued through the last couple of centuries. It becomes, you know, it's a narrative that becomes the truth. I mean, discovery and terra nullius and settlement have more or less sort of been exposed through the Mabo decision. But still, it's always, people are still clutching onto this thing, you know, they just won't let it go. But I suppose it's just like the things I say to start conversations, I guess, and it's a conversation about truth. It's things that just get embedded into the psyche of people, and I was, you know, I'm a Murray kid, and I got brought up in a mainstream school, and we were taught these things, and I did learn this, and I would have done tests and exams on these things. It was always a bit funny and a bit weird. Like I was learning it, and I'm going, all right, okay, and I suppose, I don't know, but yeah, it's like conversations, and being able to talk about things.
Absolutely. I think it's a very clever, powerful work. And I know that watching people engage with these works, even just in the 2 weeks that we were able to have the exhibition open, it was really heartening to see young Murray kids reacting to the work, particularly this decolonised culture as power, and lining up in front of the work, you know, to get selfies and get that work and those words in behind them. And I know that was an audience that you were really keen to talk directly to.
Yeah, yeah. Like I say, I want not just kids, but our people to know about these words: decolonise, imperialism, ceded, sovereignty, because these are words that have been that are used like throughout the founding of this nation. And when I was growing up, and there was always this thing about treaty and land rights and things. And nowadays, I think saying these things about talking about treaty and land rights and stuff, politicians and that can just shrug them off these days. And when you talk about sovereignty, and I say I'm a sovereign man, you know. Now, I think they'd listen to that. I think they would go, oh, okay, because they're not going to deny me of my sovereignty, because they know I'm a sovereign man. You know, they can probably knock back a treaty, but you know, and this thing with putting mob in the constitution, that's, to me, that's all their law. You know, they want to include us into something. We know where we are. I know who I am. So, you know, a bit wary of the constitution too, and how it's done. But like I said, like, yeah, those words I feel are important to me, that I've picked up and researched, and they always pop up. And imperialism, that they say imperialism's over, but it's imperialism, colonisation. When did that stop? You know, what, 1901, when they made Australia a federation or something. Like that's, I say, that's all signing the paper, in, out trays, in, out, sign the paper, but you know, still got to plug away and just tell them who you are.
Yeah. And as a nation, they are, you know, ongoing issues and conversations that are yet to be, you know, fully explored and healed, I think. I think 2008, there was a moment with an apology, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the 20s, I suppose, for, you know, Indigenous Australia and recognition of this land and this country. I know that Queensland's starting their Tracks to Treaty programs at the start of this decade, so here we are racing into it with all the change.
Yeah, like, yeah, it's an interesting time. It's and blackfellas, you know, we're patient people, and I know my elders and the old people that have passed. Like the things I'm saying, they're not new.
Yeah.
They're just recycled messages that I'm doing now, and I don't expect things to happen in my lifetime. I'm not demanding anything. I'm just passing on the message, and things have happened in my lifetime that I didn't think would ever happen. So I say, like, our people are patient, and just keep on doing what we're doing, and try to make things better for the next generation. Yeah.
That's it. And through art, we're able to have this voice and tell stories and start conversations. And I'm just so grateful that you have created this work and shared it with us. And, you know, just so glad to see you making this work. And I hope that over the next months, you get some time and space to keep going and keep exploring all the things.
Yeah, I'm always writing. I'm always, you know, there's always things on the news, or someone always says something that inspires you to write. No, there's never any shortage of material. It's just how it comes out. And it was an honour to be able to be part of the opening. And yeah, although I haven't seen it and I see pictures of it, to see everything up on the wall, it's like so stoked. And yeah, fully wrapped.
Well, we were days off an official opening, and it was a shame to have to make the call to, you know, not go ahead with the opening of NorthSite and the artist party. But I think now there's new ways that we can continue to share this work and share it with, you know, family and other people beyond far north Queensland.
Yeah.
Do you have any aspirations for this particular body of work?
Thinking about it, like after I've done it, like when I'm in the process of doing it, like I did the last one, I was just happy to see it on the wall. But I've always wanted to be able to, I suppose, expose it to more people. Like the two canvas ones, conflicting cultures, that went to Bundaberg Regional Gallery. So that was on country. That was back on my traditional home, and so that was ticked off my bucket list. Being able to exhibit at home. I never got to go down there to see it, but just being able to share that with family down home, yeah, didn't think I'd be able to do that, but just want to keep on continuing, I guess. It was really interesting working on paper, so in a different way, like instead of printing, and it was fun. I found out and discovered some things and played with it, so I think I'll try some. I've still got paper here, so I'll still muck around with that.
Oh, excellent. Well, I have no doubt that you will keep making, and there'll be more time, and we'll all get to come back together in the future. We don't know how long away that is now, but thank you very much, Darren, for sharing your work. And it looks like it's getting dark there in the Arts Centre now.
Yeah, the sun's going down. I better make a move soon. The boss has been ringing me to get out.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for the time, and we'll catch up with you.
Yeah, thank you, and NorthSite, and congratulations on the opening.
Thank you.